Hi everyone. Thank you for attending our Questline webinar on our 2021 Energy Utility Benchmarks Report, Accelerating Digital Customer Relationships. My name is Maureen Murky, and I'm the technical producer of today's webinar. Before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. To the left of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. Most of the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most of your desktop space. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget, which is directly below the presentation window. We will try to answer all questions during the webcast, but if a more in-depth answer is needed or we run out of time, they will be answered later via email. Some networks may cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides do fall behind, pushing F5 on your keyboard will refresh the page. If you do experience any other disruptions during the broadcast, please use the Q&A widget for any technical questions. We will be sending everyone a follow-up email within the next few days, which will include a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation and the playback link to the recording of today's webinar. We will also be conducting poll questions during the presentation and would greatly appreciate your participation. Please be aware that you are not the only participant today. The names of the other attendees are not being shown to you for privacy. Now, let me introduce today's host. Mike Carter is a senior engineer for Questline. Mike has a bachelor's in engineering and an MBA degree from The Ohio State University. He is also a certified energy manager. At Questline, Mike writes articles for newsletters, answers Ask an Expert inquiries, and develops webinars on energy topics. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike, who will introduce our guests and get things started for us today.
Thank you, Maureen. I want to first go over our agenda in this benchmarking report today. We're going to be explaining the basis of our methodology in terms of source data, and then cover the key findings of our analysis, including what customers expect. Then we'll examine the open rate, click-to-open rate, and click-through rate performance of over 300 million messages we sent in 2020. This will include highlights from welcome series and paperless billing campaigns. We'll also share data about what we found in our top-performing content, as well as the best delivery days and times that maximize customer engagement. And we'll finish up today answering your questions and summarizing the main takeaways. So let's get started by introducing our trio of speakers. Bethany Farchione is a marketing director at Questline, responsible for the company's brand promotion strategy. Bethany has over 10 years of experience with content creation, public relations, and digital marketing. In addition to energy utilities, she's worked with clients in transportation, consumer packaged goods, retail, and healthcare. Our next two speakers, Joshua Platt, Account Director, and Colleen Bullett, Account Supervisor at Questline, are responsible for client stewardship, financial management, and strategic account planning. They oversee utility branding, customer communications, energy efficiency, paperless billing, and outage communications, among other initiatives. Josh Platt has 20-plus years of digital marketing and content creation experience, including more than 15 years working at marketing services agencies. His clients have included companies and organizations in the utility, nonprofit, financial, government, retail, and healthcare sectors. Colleen Bullett has over 8 years of digital marketing and content creation experience across the utility, nonprofit, and education sectors. Well, welcome, speakers. We're going to launch our first of 4 poll questions in our presentation today, and here's the first. Question is, what is your energy utilities level of digital communications experience today? We give you 3 choices. There's novice, intermediate, or advanced. So maybe you have very limited experience in digital communications, you have awareness of it, well, you'd probably be putting yourself in the advanced category. Or if you regularly use multiple digital communication challenges and different types of channels, then you could probably put yourself in the advanced channel, or maybe you're somewhere else in between. We really appreciate you participating in our polls today. I'm just going to wait just a little bit longer. I see people are still answering, getting some good data here. And also, if you have any questions throughout the webinar today, click on the left on that question mark icon and enter your questions, and we'll address those at the end of today's presentation. So I think we're about done here. I'm going to push the results here to everyone so we can see. And you should all be seeing this now. So most of you are considering yourself in the advanced area. I think you'll find some things to learn today, and a fair number of you also are gathered in the intermediate or even novice area, and I think you'll find it certainly valuable as well. So with that, Bethany, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started today. So just click Take Control.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be talking about Questline's Energy Utility Benchmarks report. This is our 7th year of producing the report, and working exclusively with energy utilities, we have a lot of data to evaluate. We looked at data from over 450 energy utilities and evaluated over 356 million email messages. All of the data we're talking about today is from January 1, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. So let's dive into the report. If you had to take just one thing away from the data we found, it would be that digital engagement is up across the board. It is up in general. Digital was sped up by the pandemic. McKinsey reports that adoption was accelerated by 3 to 4 years in just the last year alone. As they say, necessity breeds ingenuity, and people were looking to adopt digital solutions. So let's look at some of our specific data. We had digital engagement across the board up in almost every category. We had our highest overall open rate in report history at 28%. This is a 14.2% higher rate than the previous year. Our welcome emails or onboarding messages also had the highest open rate in report history at 51%. And really interestingly, which Colleen will talk about in a little bit more detail, is our paperless billing. We saw a 53% higher click to open rate on paperless billing promotions. People were looking to adopt digital solutions. So we know that digital interactions are up, but what exactly is a digital relationship? Having a digital relationship with your customer means that your energy utility is proactively using two-way communication to connect with them. You're listening to what their needs and interests are, and you're delivering targeted, personalized, and consistent messages. The digital part indicates how you reach them with email, text, web, or social. And the relationship part in the equation is about being responsive and relevant to their needs and interests. For an energy utility, that whole relationship progression might look like an onboarding or welcome series of emails, followed by adoption into paperless, and then asking your customers what they care about and paying attention to what they want to learn more of, and sending them segmented e-newsletters or relevant program promotions based on their responses and behaviors. This is important because customer expectations have changed. Customers want to be marketed to, they want to hear from their utility, but only if it's relevant and only if it's personalized. There are drivers from outside industries that have caused this to be the case for today's marketing communications. Retail industry in particular has driven this and changed what customers expect from all of the brands that they engage with. So the utility industry is evolving beyond just sending bill reminders, and as many of you said, you're advanced with your communications. So you're doing more than just simple reminder and payment emails. You are working with them to deliver what they need and what they care about. And data is a really essential piece of that. Data allows you to see what the customer wants and what they don't want, and then you can build your communication strategy about that. So let's look at a few more numbers. When you have a digital relationship, what's the payback? We have seen with our data huge paybacks. For example, when people engage and open their welcome series or onboarding messages, they open subsequent messages from their energy utility at a 30% higher rate. Similar for e-newsletter subscribers, they open promotional emails at a 16% higher rate. So it's not just about looking at individual email open and click rates. It's looking at the holistic customer experience. How are they engaging with every message that they provide, and how do those interact with each other? So I know most of us have many of our vaccines now, and we're tired of hearing about COVID, so I promise I won't talk about this very much, but I can't not mention it if we're looking at data from 2020. Utilities who had existing digital relationships with their customers had a much easier time reaching them during COVID. So by maintaining engagement during good times, they were able to effectively reach customers during the bad times. We saw engagement go up for people who were already communicating digitally or over email with their utility. They had a 53.1% higher click rate, and they opened emails at a 16.4% higher rate. On the negative side, we did see a 1% drop in deliverability from this last year compared to 2019. This is because many utilities tried to reach customers that they hadn't spoken to in a long time or maybe had never spoken to before. There were broken email addresses and some inaccuracies in data. So that was maybe the one downfall that we saw within our numbers this year. What else happened during the crisis? Let's see. Record high engagement. So there was an average open rate of 40% in March 2020. That's 44% higher than last year at that time. People really wanted to hear from their energy utility, whether that was for payment information or just general guidance of how to deal with working from home and new energy consumption. E-newsletters also had unprecedented engagement. They were a reliable form of communication and a small sense of normalcy amongst the chaos. The click-to-open rate for email newsletters hit a 4-year high in March and April of 2020. The average open rate went up by 69% and click-through rate by 134% in March 2020. The most popular content during that time was about energy from working from home, cybersecurity, and bill payment options. Numbers from the pandemic drive home the fact that people want to hear from their utility, and there's an overall rise in importance of digital communication. Customers want, need, and expect relevant guidance from their utility. And that's it from me. Thank you, Mike. Back to you.
Well, thank you, Bethany. If anything Bethany shared has prompted a question for you, type those in the Q&A text box. Now we're going to launch our second poll question. How satisfied are you with your utility's digital communications? Again, maybe you're not at all satisfied, or maybe you're very satisfied, or somewhere else in between. We give you 5 choices. So select the one that best fits what you think your situation is in terms of your designs, your delivery, your content, etc. Are you very satisfied? Maybe just satisfied or not satisfied at all? We'll be sharing that with everyone here as soon as everyone's finished replying. Looks like a number of you have jumped right on that, getting some clear distinction between the different choices. Appreciate that. And I'll just wait just a couple more seconds. Looks like people are still active with our poll. I think it's a great question. Everyone should be really interested to see the results of this. How satisfied are you with your energy utilities digital communications today? And I think we've gotten most responses now. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. Looks like most of you are satisfied, but really only about 15% of you are either very satisfied or more than satisfied. So it looks like you're looking for some improvement. And hopefully, maybe what we share today, you'll achieve that. So Colleen, please take control and share more about our utility clients' experience with Questline's Welcome Series and Paperless Billing campaigns and the importance of personalization.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to dive a little deeper into our Welcome Series and a couple of other things that Bethany mentioned. So a Welcome Series is a series of cadenced emails that automatically deploy to your new customers. They're filled with everything they need to know about being a utility customer, right? How to pay their bill, reporting outages, energy efficiency, all packed together in simple, clear messages to your customers. So gone are the days of the giant paper packets that you get in the mail. A digital welcome series is critical for a good first impression with those new customers. As Bethany said, expectations have changed and customers expect a warm and informative onboarding from their utility. And they want it to be digital. We saw that in 2020 with 51% of all welcome series messages being opened. We also saw in 2020 that we had the highest open rate and click-through rate for our welcome series in report history. So again, that digital engagement is up. I would say our most successful welcome series tend to segment their audiences. So new customers versus movers, residential audiences versus business, in order to provide them useful, timely information that meets their needs. This welcome series is also the first step in building that digital relationship with your customers. So much like previous years in 2020, we saw customers that engage with the welcome series. We call them welcome series graduates. Those customers are 30% more likely to engage with future emails from their utility. Not only are you providing a helpful onboarding experience to new customers, increasing customer satisfaction, but you are also creating a digital relationship with that customer, and they're more likely to engage with you down the road. So you're creating a trusting relationship where they expect to hear from you and they want to hear from you. Other trends that we saw this year, paperless billing is a growing priority for our utilities as it offers long-term cost savings, right, for every person that converts. So paperless had a 53% CTOR increase across all of our paperless campaigns this year. That's huge. Utilities are working hard to really refine the messaging and the tactics around paperless to encourage adoption. So we saw that campaigns with incentives perform 54% better than those without an incentive. We also saw one-click enrollment pages being used as a tool to remove barriers for customers to enroll. So that has shown great success as well. I'll share a little bit about a case study with Duquesne Light Company out of Pittsburgh. They're one of my clients that I work closely with. So they launched their paperless campaign in May of 2020, right at the height of the pandemic, obviously. But they enrolled over 38,000 customers between May and December. So it was kind of a staged approach. We started with custom creative campaign, email campaign from Questline. And then we kind of gathered that initial low-hanging fruit, right? The people who are likely to enroll immediately. Then we moved on to one-click enrollment. And basically what that is it's a landing page. So for a customer experience, they click from the email onto a landing page. Their information is already there, pre-populated. They click, yes, I want to enroll, and they're done. So we translate that information back to DLC. They enroll those customers, and the customer's done. So it's really easy for them. DLC realized through surveys and research panels that a major barrier for their customers was their My Account login. It required an account number, and customers just weren't willing or able to find that account number when they went to log in. And so we worked to really streamline the enrollment process, and we saw a big jump in adoption. In the fall, we experimented with incentives. So again, we know that incentives boost enrollment. And so we tried a couple of different things, right? We did a sweepstakes around getting a free year of residential electric, right? Pay your bill for a year. And then around December, we did a help with your holiday bills sweepstakes. Both were very popular and very successful. So the campaign continues in 2021. This year, we're focused on paperless adoption. We're going to be utilizing segmented customer personas and really testing and identifying the messaging that is going to move those personas or segments to convert to paperless, right? But at the same time, we're also going to be growing their customer email list because we want to be able to reach a larger audience through digital channels. So we've got a couple different strategies that we're working through, again, to reach those long-term goals. Personalization is another big trend that we saw that can play out in a lot of different ways in your marketing strategy. It's not just about including the recipient's name. It's important to show your customers that you understand their needs, right? It's part of a successful digital relationship. We know that personalized emails deliver 6 times higher transaction rates. And we know that millennials said 56% of them said they would swap their current brand for a brand that customizes to them. Now, while millennials or anyone can't really swap out their utility, they can certainly use their buying power elsewhere. So personalization is expected. It should be at the forefront of your marketing strategy because, again, we're seeing it in our personal inboxes. Like Bethany said, the retail industry has really moved personalization forward. They know what you've bought, they know what you want to buy, and they're giving you a discount code for it, right? So marketplace emails are a way that you can include personalization in your strategy. That could be, abandoned cart emails, or you may also like emails, right, based on past purchases, things like that. Another area where you can utilize personalization is in program promotion. We're seeing an increase in slightly more complex program promotion campaigns, right? So we're taking one email, we're sending it out to a group of customers, and then we're doing follow-up or retargeting messaging specific to the action that they took on that first email. So it could be the group of customers that clicked but didn't actually convert to the program get one email, where those that opened but didn't click get a different email. That can look a lot of different ways, and it can get real complex, but that's just one example of how you can use personalization in program promotions. As I mentioned with DLC, segmentation is also a growing trend in program promotions, but also in e-newsletters. So segmented e-newsletter content is one of the easiest ways that you can execute personalization. We're seeing big boosts in open rate with segmented content, as well as a 44% higher click-through rate on segments created based on industry and other available demographics. I'll share another case study here. AEP Ohio this year launched a segmented e-newsletter for their key accounts group based on industry. And so with that content geared towards the needs of each specific audience, they saw immediate and steep improvement. 84% higher engagement for their healthcare audience, 54% higher for education-focused audience, and 43% higher engaged for manufacturing clients. So the segmented newsletter content can offer great bang for your buck as you're sort of learning the ropes of personalization while still meeting the needs of your customers and improving satisfaction scores. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Mike for another poll question.
Well, thank you, Colleen. Now, before Josh speaks, we're going to launch our third poll question for today. The question is your energy utility currently segmenting customer communications? We give you 3 choices there. Maybe you're doing that on most communications. That would be choice number 3. Or you don't really segment communications much at all, which would be number 1. So let's see what your experience is right now, what your practices are with that customer segmentation. And I think we're getting some clarity on that as you respond. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you who are responding with your questions. We're getting a number of questions that we'll be tackling here in just a little bit. So keep those coming. We're going to have a lively discussion. We'll have about 15-20 minutes to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and push the results here now on this particular poll so everyone can see as a benchmark where our audience is today. So if you can see, some communications are segmented at 3/4 of those who responded. So you do have some experience with that. It is a popular topic, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So now Josh is going to share data on e-newsletters performance, content, and delivery. Josh, take control.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks, Colleen, for those insights regarding Welcome Series, Paperless Billing, and personalization. We're going to come back to some of those as we talk about newsletters and promotional emails here. But next, we're going to look at benchmark data for email newsletters. 2020 saw a resurgence of email newsletters. A HubSpot survey found that 81% of B2B marketers said that e-newsletters were their most used content marketing tool, and this held true across multiple industry sectors. Newsletters, as Colleen mentioned, can be segmented. They offer a regular cadence that provides customers with valuable educational information, and they drive engagement and conversions. Let's look a little bit more closely at a few of these key attributes. First, as Colleen mentioned, newsletters can be segmented by audience and topic to provide relevant communications based on customer interests and behaviors. For example, an EV newsletter would only go to known EV owners and would be focused on topics of interest exclusively to them. Calls to action would promote relevant EV programs and incentives. Clients often ask me how they can increase engagement for their promotional emails. We chat about A/B testing strategies, personalization of emails, dynamic content, things like that. And while these are all worthwhile tactics, by far the best option for increasing engagement with promotional emails is to have a welcome series and a newsletter. According to our benchmark data for 2020, the open rate of promotional emails is 16.1% higher among newsletter subscribers than non-newsletter readers. And this is not a one-off data point. This trend is something we've seen almost every year since we started the benchmark 7 years ago. It's not to say that promotional emails don't have value unto themselves, but newsletters offer a great way to cross-promote programs and reinforce promotional offerings without the hard sell that a promotional email relies on. In 2020, energy utilities were able to generate more than 75,000 outbound clicks from e-newsletter content to Paperless Billing, My Account, energy marketplaces, and other programs. And as Colleen mentioned, when coupled a welcome series and a newsletter together, promotional emails, you drive engagement at a profoundly influential level. We're going to look next at some benchmark data for content within the newsletters. By delivering the right content to the right audience, your energy utility has the opportunity to become a trusted resource and an energy expert to customers. We found, both in our own data and looking at external surveys, that video should be a big part of your content strategy. HubSpot reports that 96% of consumers say they've increased the amount of video content they're watching online during the pandemic. It's not surprising. And according to Smart Insights in 2021, the average consumer is watching almost 100 minutes a day of video content. That compares to just 84 minutes a day in 2019. According to our own benchmarks, Questline partner newsletters drove 90,000 video views, with customers spending an average of more than 96 seconds, a minute and a half plus, engaging with each video. Ask yourself, when is the last time you spent 90 seconds focused on anything? And you can admit it, I won't be offended. You tuned me out about 30 seconds into the last slide. Let's look next at residential newsletter content specifically. Perhaps not surprisingly, content related to the coronavirus took the top spot. Coronavirus Action Plan Protecting Your Power was our most viewed piece of content. Other top items were related to energy efficiency around the home and advice on appliance energy savings. Our benchmarks show that customers interacted with a variety of content types. Articles remain the most popular and engaging content format, with 61% of all interactions coming from articles. But the next most engaged with content type was video, and that's growing. For the residential audience segment, that comes in at just under 12%. Among videos, 5 ways to save while staying warm was the most viewed, followed by You Can Prevent Freezing Pipes. Infographics accounted for a bit over 11% of engagement, followed by slideshows at 8.2%, and interactive media like quizzes at 6.6% engagement. There we go. Next, we're going to take a look at business content, and lists again proved to be popular. The top piece of content was an infographic focused on low-hanging fruit, 5 simple energy savings upgrades, followed by 5 hidden costs of summer slideshow, and an improving energy performance, 5 questions you should ask article. You're sensing a trend here, right? The list continued among videos too. There's 5 ways to save on hidden energy waste and 5 ways to save while improving productivity, which took 2 of the top 5 spots. As for the breakdown of content type by engagement for the business customer, Articles accounted for by far the largest share of engagement, coming in at over 73%, almost 74%. Infographics followed, and videos came in next. Those are at 10.9 respectively. And then slideshows accounted for nearly 5%, with interactive media garnering the remaining 1.4% of engagement. Another question that clients frequently ask is, what is the best day of the week and time of day to send a newsletter or a promotional email? This slide shows a breakout of open rates and click-to-open rates, which measure engagement with your email, by weekday. And a disclaimer is warranted here before we go into more details. Remember, benchmarks show an average. Some utilities are going to perform above the benchmark, some will perform below. That's the nature of the beast. The data the benchmark's performance metrics show for 450 plus utilities that Questline works with. Your performance is going to vary based on any number of factors, weather, time of day, what else is happening in the region in terms of the news, etc. And as such, relying too heavily on this benchmark data can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you rely on it and deploy only on the day with the highest engagement, you'll never other days might perform better and yield better results. So I would encourage you, look at the benchmark data, but don't be afraid to test both day of week and time of day to determine what is actually best for your customer base. Now, with that said, residential newsletter and open rates and click-to-open rates were highest during non-work hours on Thursdays, followed closely by Mondays and Wednesdays. Residential newsletters sent during the 6 o'clock hour experienced a 54% open rate, now that's 6 p.m. Small business newsletter open rates were relatively similar across all weekdays. There was a slight increase, however, in performance on Mondays and Wednesdays. And SMB clicks to open were highest on Mondays and Fridays in late afternoon and evenings. In fact, SMB newsletters sent around 9 o'clock in the evening had a 43% open rate and 27% click-to-open rate. Key accounts newsletters saw the best open rates on Thursdays, followed by Mondays and Wednesdays, with key account click-to-open rates being highest at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the click-to-open rate for key account newsletters was highest on Tuesdays, coming in at just over 21%. Again, I encourage you to use this data as a starting point and to test to determine what works best for your customers and segments. With that, let's return to promotional emails for a moment. This slide shows the breakdown of residential, SMB, and key account promotional messages by open rate and time of day during the weekdays. Residential customers opened and clicked on promotional emails most on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Emails sent in the early morning at 5 and 6 a.m. garnered the most clicks. Emails sent late at night and over the weekends garnered the least engagement. Again, I'd encourage you to test these benchmarks. Historically, many utilities don't send over the weekend as their call centers may be short-staffed, and we don't have nearly as much data for weekend performance because of this. Small business program promotions were opened at the highest rate on Mondays and Wednesdays and garnered the highest click-to-opens on the same days. Key account promotions saw the highest opens on Tuesdays and Thursdays and the highest engagement on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Wednesdays, with Tuesdays garnering just a bit better performance. Next, we're going to take a look at webinars. COVID, as you well know, webinars that you attended. It also caused a spike in the number of webinars that Questline staged on behalf of our utility partners last year. We saw an 86% growth, and we anticipate that this trend will continue in 2021. It certainly has through the first quarter. Today, in fact, there are 3 client webinars running just this morning and this afternoon. The most popular webinar topics focused on maintenance and savings. And while webinars were mostly successful for business customers, they understandably grew in usage for residential customers. Questline's utility partners focused on ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion in webinars was also a trend in 2020. A big shout out to both National Grid and Eversource, who co-produced a series of residential income assistance program promotion webinars. Together, they garnered nearly 10,000 total attendees across 6 webinars in October. These webinars were offered in English with captioning and American Sign Language interpretation, Spanish, and Portuguese. And finally, at least from me, let's take a quick look at social media engagement. Facebook remains the dominant social media platform by far, according to the Pew Research Center, with 69% of adults using the platform and 74% of all Facebook users visiting the site daily. Among our utility clients who shared Questline content, Facebook posts that included video performed best, outperforming static posts by 200%. Again, we see the importance of video. The most popular social media topics included home care, safety, and energy savings opportunities. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Questline's engineer, Mike Carter, for information about our new benchmarks calculators and a poll question before we open it up to your questions. Mike, take it away.
Well, thank you, Josh. Before we take the audience questions, I'm going to share about a brand new Engage tool that we're releasing this year associated with our benchmarks report. It's called our Benchmarks Calculator, and you should be seeing that on your screen right now. Let me move that forward here. There we go. And so we encourage you to use this tool to benchmark your energy utilities' digital communications performance against our 450 utilities across the nation. So more or less in a few clicks, you can compare specific performance metrics based on audience and campaign type. We developed this tool to kind of help you understand where you stand in the industry and then what you need to do to further your reach and build engagement with your customers. So we'll be launching this tool tomorrow, so keep an eye on our website to begin your calculations. Let's answer some questions now. We've got a number of those that came through, and I'm going to start with kind of in order here. And Josh, I think I'm going to give you the first crack at this. Bethany shared a number of numbers. Do they translate to better member satisfaction or customer satisfaction? And we conduct a survey to confirm that?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks to the utility that submitted that question. It's a good one. It's also a little difficult for us to answer. Questline doesn't directly run any customer satisfaction surveys, but with that said, we do monitor industry research. And according to J.D. Power, proactive communication from a utility typically results in a higher customer satisfaction rate. That especially holds true, and I've done research in this area, particularly around proactive messaging for outage communications and restoration communications. So while I can't speak to all communications in general, J.D. Power certainly says for outage communications, the more communication, the better.
Fantastic. Another question here, what does segmented customer persona mean? Who's going to jump on it? Colleen?
Yeah, I can take that. So when I was speaking about customer personas from Duquesne Light, they have partnered with a third-party company who does AI, and they are gathering large quantities of metadata around their customers. And then there is an AI, I don't know how it works, I think it's magic, but they're taking the data and creating personas around priority programs. And so Duquesne has identified a couple of programs that they wanted personas created around, one of them being EV, one of them being e-bill, payment agreements. As we know, those are a priority for all utilities right now. But they're essentially creating personas based around metadata with all sorts of demographic information so that we can target the messaging for that particular program.
Okay. And we got a number of questions about paperless billing. Let's take the first one here. What was the best incentive level you saw for switching to paperless, and how many customers did Duquesne have on paper?
So I would have to look back at some numbers, but I think our, for the sweepstakes that we ran, the incentives that we ran in the fall and over the holidays, we had about a 2.5–3% conversion rate. So that is those people who clicked through to that engagement or to that enrollment page and actually got themselves enrolled.
Okay. Another question here, and it kind of relates to this issue about satisfaction, but I think it's a little broader than that. The question is, we've seen that paperless billing digital campaigns result in some of the lowest satisfaction scores related to communications. So what would you say is the biggest bang for our buck for most impactful communication topics? Who'd want to
Well, I
grab
think
that?
I'll start, and if anyone
Okay.
wants to jump in, I think it's always important to remember, without seeing the communications that you're putting out there, it's hard to know, but with any digital marketing campaign, you really want to focus on the benefits for the customer, not the benefits for the utility. And that
Right.
is an evolution, right, that utilities have undergone, thinking of customers as customers rather than ratepayers, and how can we bring value to our customer base, right? So in the case of paperless campaigns, we've had a lot of success with messaging around how the customer can save time, ease of enrollment, save money, how e-bill is more secure for customers. And going back to the personalization, if you can target specific messages to specific audiences, so if you identify a segment that is interested in saving money, you can focus that messaging to that group specifically and get more conversions that way.
All right. And speaking of paperless, what are the hardest customers to reach that you haven't converted to paperless? Is there a couple segments there that are pretty tough compared to others?
Sure, I can field that one, Mike. It's a good question, and I think I'm actually a pretty good case study here. I've been involved in digital marketing since 1997. I've paid my bills almost exclusively online since 2000. I still get a paper bill from every utility I work with. My cable company, my cell phone provider, my power utility, and my gas utility. Some of that is a skepticism. I want to actually see what I'm paying for. Some of it is, my brain is just busy, and I need to see the paper reminder to put it in my bill organizer to know when I need to pay it. Some of it is just inertia. I don't know exactly why I keep it. But there's always going to be some segment of your population, again, your customer base, not your ratepayers, for whatever reason, whether it's economics, they don't have internet, they're not digitally savvy, they're older, they're more skeptical than I am, that won't enroll. We've worked with utility partners to do incentive programs. A guaranteed incentive tends to work better than a sweepstakes-based incentive. Something that's tangible, like a $5 Starbucks gift card, tends to outperform save $5 off your next bill because it's something that your customer can actually see. The other thing we've seen more and more, and I'm not sure that I like it as a customer experience, but it is effective, and Colleen, maybe you can speak a little more to this, is that some of our utility partners are moving people to paperless billing unless they opt to keep a paper bill. And Colleen, maybe you can address kind of that hybrid notion to increase customer satisfaction. Yeah,
there's an approach and a strategy that's really around, well, first PSC needs to say it's okay, but utilities who have gotten permission from their PSC to auto enroll people, essentially, they've kind of taken a dual enrollment approach where they give you kind of a grace period where you're signed up for e-bill automatically and you have this many months to still receive a paper bill, and then the paper bill is phased out, or you are automatically signed up for e-bill and then you have so many opportunities to opt out of opting in. So there are a couple strategies there. They're relatively new, I think, on the scene, and so we have yet to see how they play out in long-term customer satisfaction. But they are out there.
Okay. Colleen, you had introduced our welcome series emails. We have a question here. Can you share more about the structure and sequence of the welcome emails?
Absolutely. Those are deployed through our Engage platform, and they're an automated program. And so essentially what that means is we create a series of messages, usually around 3 to 4 messages that are organized around the things that you need to know as a new customer, whether it's, signing up for my account, download our app, how to pay your bills, restoring your power, outage notifications, all that fun stuff. We kind of organize it into different messages, and then it's cadenced regularly through an automated program. Typically, you get them once a week. So as a new customer, before you get anything else from X utility, you get a welcome email, and then there's usually an outage information, and then there's usually an energy efficiency. Here are the resources and tools that you can use that we provide, etc. And then essentially depending on the utility, once you graduate from that welcome series, you're included in promotional and marketing emails.
Okay. A follow-up on that, the question just came in. When gathering stats for the welcome series, were those overall stats based on an entire series of 3 to 5 emails, or were those stats just off the first email in the series? And then additionally, what was the average number of welcome emails you saw in a single series?
I believe our average is 4.
Okay.
Bethany, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, the graduates and the welcome series numbers that we're looking at are for the whole series. So while you have some people who might opt out after the first email, the vast majority of people stay in and receive all 4 emails.
And I would add to that only that in our experience, we found that no matter how many emails in a sequence, 3, 4, 5, some utilities even use 6, whatever that last email is, by the time the customer has seen it, that tends to have the lowest engagement rate. So knowing that, plan for that to be the least important, right? If your goal is to get people to understand their bill and enroll in paperless billing or My Account Access, something like that, it shouldn't be the last email you send. It should probably be the second or third email you send. That last email, again, you test and measure and see what works for your audience, but it tends to be around general energy efficiency.
Excellent. Josh, you were talking about a customer that was dealing with webinar inclusivity, I think it was, and the question came in, how did they target this inclusivity?
Sure, it's a good question. Thank you to whomever submitted it. So this series of webinars was offered to residents of Massachusetts, gas and electric, as well as dual fuel customers who the utilities together knew to be income eligible. They knew based on their own customer data that that customer base would be English speakers, Spanish speakers, and Portuguese speakers. We also received some direct communications from folks. That was profoundly eye-opening. Somebody who said, I'm deaf. I actually spoke with this person by phone. She said, I'm deaf. I can't be the only one, and I don't know sign language. I need open subtitles, captioning. Can you have this? So we worked with our webinar provider to provide this. The utilities provided the native speakers for Spanish and Portuguese, and they provided, one of the utilities provided an American Sign Language interpreter. Obviously, your audience bases are going to vary depending on where you are and the demographics of your customer base. In New York City alone, for example, English, Russian, Hebrew, Chinese, two different types of Chinese, in fact, are among the top 10 languages spoken. So this is by no means an inclusive list. We do work with a webinar provider that can provide captioning and translation services. And for the most part, the utilities do have those resources in-house as well.
Excellent. Bethany, here's a question for you. Has COVID changed open rates of e-newsletters and emails as far as the time of day and day of week?
That's a great question. It definitely raised engagement, but the data shows that it didn't really change time of day or day preference very much. So if I look at our data, in 2019, Tuesdays and Thursdays were the best day to send residential e-newsletters. And then in 2020, it was Mondays and Thursdays. So very, very close. For time, 2 and 4 p.m. were the best in 2019. In 2020, 5 and 6. So a little bit different on time, but days are really, really close. I think that times probably shifted because of different work-life balance schedules that people had. But we do tend to see very similar data year over year.
Very good.
Mike, if I can jump in for just a moment, we've gotten a couple of questions around segmentation and time of day for over the weekend. This applies both to newsletters and to promotional emails both. We have some data regarding that. Historically, as I mentioned, a lot of our utility partners are hesitant to send over the weekend because of reduced call center staffing and things like that. With that said, over the last couple of years, we've seen an increase in the number of emails that go out over the weekend, particularly promotional emails. This includes over holiday weekends like Thanksgiving, taking advantage of Black Friday and things like that. I don't know that we have enough data to call it out in the benchmark set. Again, 350 million emails, and our data analyst, works with statistically relevant data sets. So while we have some anecdotal evidence, I don't know that we have benchmarkable data. I would encourage, though, that our utilities do continue to test it, so long as they are prepared for the influx of phone calls that may come over a weekend.
Very good. Colleen, another welcome email question here. The question is, are the welcome emails most effective for a certain customer type or more effective? Residential, business, small biz, large biz, etc.?
I think the majority of our welcome series are residential targeted. With that said, we've seen an increase in the last several years for the business audience simply because it's so valuable to them. I always tell my clients that they should include anything in the welcome series that saves them money. And obviously, we want to make that customer facing and customer value added, but it's important to share that information about your app, about paperless billing, about my account, right? Because it's the first opportunity you have to engage with that audience digitally, whether it's residential or business. And so regardless of the audience, it's effective. It's such an effective tool based on what the information that you're trying to share with them.
I would add, Colleen, that we've seen in our data that more utilities are also doing specific welcome series for their moving customers. So people who are still within their service region but have moved locations and resending them information, but slightly different, showing that the utility's paying attention to the fact that they've worked with them before, but they may have different needs now. And that goes for residential and business.
All right, a little different question here. We had shared the top content. The question is, why was the top content so popular? I'm going to go ahead and push back to that slide. This is the one for residential. And Josh, you're nodding your head there. What do you think this particular content was so popular?
Well, I think a couple of items. Number one, obviously, the coronavirus action plan. I remember, and I like to think of myself as, pretty reasonable and calm. Having a full-on panic attack in the grocery store with the freezer cases being empty, and where was I going to forget toilet paper? Where was I going to get food? And that quickly evolved into, wait a minute. If everybody has to stay home, how does my power stay on? Am I still going to have water? Think about, just what the snow and ice did in Texas recently. That's what I thought we were in for at the start of the pandemic. So that one makes perfect sense. The other ones all basically talk about saving me time or saving me money, right? And especially in the age of COVID, where we're home more, we're doing school, we're doing work, we're doing social activities all from home, we're using more energy, even saving a few dollars. I think that first electric bill, in April or May, when everybody was home using the internet all the time and the heat was on more, may have been a shock to folks. Even with my level bill program on my bill, I saw a bump in my energy bill. And so I think that content resonates with folks because it saves them money. And that value added educational content is useful to me as the consumer.
All right. Well, we have just a couple more minutes of questions, but there's enough time to submit additional questions, so keep those coming. Another question came up. We've talked a lot about and looked at a lot of metrics for delivery and engagement. And the question is, what's the more important metric, click-to-open rate or click-through rate, for instance? What's the key metric to look at, really?
There really is not a perfect answer to that. They're both valuable, and it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So click-through rate versus click-to-open rate. If you are doing program promotions like eBill, where you're trying to convert people to take an action, that click-to-open rate is the number of clicks of those who opened the email. And so when you're measuring success of messaging or the CTA button language, right, there's a value in looking at CTOR because the people who didn't open it didn't even read it. And so you can't really measure success by that. So there's value in both of them. The click-through rate is really important in brand awareness and other types of spends like that. So again, it really just depends on the strategy around your overall campaign.
Okay. And Josh, you have something to add?
Yeah, I would add to that, as Colleen mentioned, it depends is not a good answer, but it's a really important one. There are times when you don't want somebody clicking on your email, right? You want them to open it, but not to click. We talked about a paperless conversion email where unless you opt out, we are going to convert you to paper-free billing. You don't actually want your customers doing that because by switching over to paperless billing, you save on printing and mailing costs, et cetera. In an outage communication where there's the estimated time of restoration and that message is contained in the body of the email, you don't need them to click. And all of that data is aggregated among the click to open and open rate pieces. So you really need to look at these on an individual case-by-case basis.
All right. I have time for just one more question here. We'll squeeze this in. Do you think that COVID played a role with an increase in soft bounces? And Bethany, why don't you go ahead and address that?
Yeah, it definitely did. We saw for the first time a drop in deliverability, and list hygiene is really important, making sure all of contacts are up to date. And the best way to do that is to have regular, consistent communication so you can continually tell if a contact has changed. When you haven't talked to someone in months or a year and then you send them another message, it's very likely to bounce. So we did see that increase, and it is in part due to COVID.
All right. Well, we've run out of time today, so if we missed addressing your question in the webinar, we'll certainly follow up offline. But I'd like to respond to one last poll today as we finish up, and that is, how useful was the information presented in this webinar? We got 5 different choices there. Could be not valuable at all, extremely valuable, or something in between. I appreciate your participation in this particular last poll. And while you're doing that, let me share, I think, several key takeaways from our speakers today. I think what we heard was that during the pandemic, digital relationships were really sped up and people were really looking for help. And then we saw that when you have established digital relationships, such as through a welcome series, they just keep growing. So that's a great foundation on which to build the relationship. I think we heard also that customer segmentation and personalization, well, it pays off. It makes a difference. Also, what was shared was the fact that video is in demand. And of course, I think this is very evident in our social media society today. We saw that 2021 will continue to see a reliance on webinars for employee and customer education. And the webinars are a great value proposition. And then the last couple of things here, I think we heard that you need to meet customers where they spend their time. And social media is a key challenge in that regard. And finally, kind of encompassing all of this, when done right, I think we can say that digital communications can drive more customer satisfaction and program participation. So again, thank you for your response and to our polls, especially this last poll. And I just want to say thank you to our speakers today, Beth, Josh, and Colleen, for your excellent insights from your experience with digital customer relationships. And of course, thank you, audience, as well, for attending today and your great questions. So now let's hear some closing comments from Maureen.
Thank you, Mike, and I would like to thank all of you for attending our webinar today. As a reminder, the presentation materials and the playback link to the recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you within the next couple of days. Should you have additional questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to contact us. Remember to also keep April 15th open for our next webinar, where we will discuss how to build lasting engagement with new customers. Thank you again for attending and have a great day, everyone.